All right, you Principal Prickley partisans, it's time to dust off your starter jackets, rip off those tearaways and blow into your game cartridges. I'm Sam Blanford.
I'm Marty T.
And I'm Simon Blanford.
And we wish it was the 90s. Well, we're back, listeners, fresh off the back of a successful Jonah Lomu's tournament. I think it's probably the first in the world of 20 teams or more. Well done to Cam Paulick for winning it. Welcome, Marty T. You were there that night. You have a good time?
Great time, Les. It was, very well organised. A lot of very tight competitive matches and a lot of rusty ones in the early rounds as well. But all in all, awesome night.
Yeah, cheers for coming. Simon stepped in late and made the semis. Well done, Si.
Thanks very much. I felt I was quite lucky to get out of my pool, to be honest. So I was very, very glad to make the semis. Disappointed to bow out to Mark. Made a big error going England and not South Africa, to be honest with you. Got dominated in the forwards in that matchup. But happy to beat Dave Lim in the quarterfinals. Always happy to beat Dave Lim at anything. Mainly because if he beats you, you'll never hear the end of it. So, yeah, that was a particularly good win just for self-preservation, if nothing else.
Yeah, nice. Well, all those people who tuned in to listen to Recess, sorry, guys. But we will carry on, and Recess, came out in 1997 on, I believe it was a Disney animation, and it portrayed the lives of 6th, 4th graders, led by the lovable rogue TJ Detweiler. And it was about how they go about their daily lives at their school, which I believe was in Arkansas, 3rd Street Elementary School. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It's on Disney Plus. The first episode is on YouTube, I think.
I think there's a few on YouTube. I watched the Origin of Womps on YouTube, so I think there's quite a few. They're only 10-minute episodes as well, which is a good thing.
We'll jump straight into our memories of the show. Maybe we'll frame this as what we can remember from probably when we watched it 20 years ago, and this time when you watched it round, or when you've watched it as an adult. What were some of the things or aspects of it that came back to you on a rewatch? We'll start with you, Marty.
Yeah, I was a massive Recess fan, watching it in the early days on the weekends and the mornings. There were, I guess I could say that I had a pretty good recollection for someone who hasn't watched it in 20-odd years. There were a lot of things that immediately came flooding back to me right from the word go. And, first one being things like just that classic, very, very memorable opening tune, starting with the bell. And that intro, absolutely iconic. And we'll get into a little bit more later as well. But, yeah, I think a lot of things just immediately came flooding back to me. As I was watching, I think I got through about 4 or 5 episodes. They're only short ones. But yeah, iconic show, quite underrated, I feel. And I think also when I was watching it back again, just the quality of the storytelling was a lot better than what I would have thought. And also, as I've gone back to watch a few other blasts from the past, they haven't quite lived up to where or the same experience from the original run, whereas Recess definitely did. Yeah. What about you, Si?
Yeah, man. Couldn't agree more. I thought that it more than held up and probably even improved from what I thought it was. My memories aren't as distant as yours, Marty. I definitely watched this a little bit as a kid. Was it Nickelodeon it was on as when we were kids? Or was it Cartoon Network?
Can't remember if it was even just on the old state channels, whether it was 2 or 3.
Terrestrial TV.
Mm.
Yeah, we definitely watched it as a bit as a kid. I watched it a lot as a teenager. Like a lot as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where when I was at teachers, there was this, Sam and I always, one of the funniest openings of any show was TJ with all the kids around him, and he said, so then Principal Prickley said, "That's not a kindergartner, that's my wife." And that was always one of our favourite. And actually, we had a skit at Teachers College that we had to do, and I repeated that joke, but just repeated Year 9. That's not a Year 9 student, that's my wife. To no laughter whatsoever. But yeah, I just echo that introduction. Absolute all-timer. The music captures all the characters. Absolute all-timer. And to your storytelling point, I just wrote down a note after you said that. I completely agree. And even the little things, I know it's simple, but the camera angles are so good. How that's always like a low angle on the principal or a high angle on a kid when they're feeling, being told off or something like that. It's just really, really, really well done. And I think I couldn't figure out if it's an adult show pitched at kids. The Simpsons is just an adult show, right? It's just for adults, pretty much. And the kids they just missed the boat and kind of liked it. I feel like Recess is probably a kids show that adults can enjoy, but I'm not entirely sure. Sam.
I think it's an adults show that is masked as a kids show. Going back to your watching it as a teenager, it would have come out 97. You were 11, so went till 2001. We watched it a lot, probably just before school, I think. Maybe just after school when we got home, and you would have just started high school. The main thing that I can remember about the show was it was all themed around kids versus adults and how adults suck, basically. And adults are, I actually, on a rewatch, adults weren't framed in as such of a negative light as I thought. So, you do get to see the human side of a lot of the adults. And I did a complete 180 on Muriel Finster, who I now revel in now that I'm a school teacher, who I absolutely hated as a child.
Yeah.
But the main things I could remember were the main characters that they used to play kickball heaps.
Yeah.
And the intro, as you guys have mentioned. The parts that I kind of came back to me on a rewatch was all the bit characters and how great they are.
For sure.
Things like womps, how TJ says womp instead of swearing. And the wall. Did you see an episode that had the wall in it?
Tell the folks at home what the wall is.
Is the wall where Finster gets them to stand and just look at the wall when they've been naughty?
Yeah.
Because there's a few scenes of just TJ talking to someone and looking at the wall, which is an all-time punishment, if you ask me. I'm pretty sure there's an episode where she changed the punishment up and just put a chalk square that they had to sit in. If I recall correctly, I could be wrong. What we're going to do today is we are going to share we've all ranked the 6 main characters as our most favorite to least favorite.
The gang.
And we're gonna
the gang, right?
The gang.
The gang.
Yeah. We'll talk about the bit characters who are really important after that. But we're going to start with, we're going to talk about someone's least favorite, and then we'll reveal where each of us has them ranked. And I'm looking forward to seeing some discrepancies here. There may not be some discrepancies. We don't know. I don't know what's on your lists. Simon, just pre coming on the podcast, revealed that he hadn't read the memo, which sounded about right. What had you done, Simon?
I just thought we were putting our 6 best characters from the show instead of ranking from least favourite to most favourite of the gang. So I've got 2 lists. That's fine. I've got my list of the gang from bottom to top.
Now, I don't want to know which characters, but how many of the gang made your top 6?
Oh, I was pretty kind to the gang. I didn't want to
As you are always.
Didn't want to be too much of a contrarian, so I just left one out.
Ooh.
But the character who was not from the gang is my number 2 character.
Interesting.
All right, we're going to start with Marty again with your least favourite. Let's see if it's the same as ours.
Yeah, this was a really tough exercise because they all had their own individual points, and I kind of felt like each individual character represented about 3 or 4 different classic school personality types. But I ended up going in 6th place with Gus Griswold.
Simon?
Am I saying my 6th place?
No, you're just saying where you ranked Gus.
Yeah, no major complaints. I had Gus at 5.
Yeah, I had Gus at 5. What made you put him least favourite, Marty?
It was a toss-up between Gus and my number 5. I think the new kid just generally should be automatically shunted down towards the tail. I feel as though it was, I don't know, bound by playground rules. Maybe I had King Bob in my ear. I felt as though, the new kid needed to be shunted down the order a wee bit.
I'll jump in very quickly there. The folks at home may not have realised that Marty just chucked in about 4 subtle references to the first episode. So kudos there, Marty. Just on that episode very quickly, Gus is the new kid, and he takes over the old new kid. And I know we're not going to talk about this in any major detail. I thought the old new kid was definitely like an homage to Steve Buscemi. But
just like Randall Weems is a homage to Mo Sislak.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but it's a great shout too.
Great shout for Randall. I've got another one that I'll pipe in on with a comparison to Randall after we get through our top 6.
Right.
So have you got anything else on Gus?
As Marty said, it's you feel kind of cruel making a pretend 4th grader your least favourite, but so it has to be someone. To me, there was a clear tier though. A clear tier that I could have honestly swapped around 6, 5, and 4 quite easily.
Interesting.
5
and 4 for me could have been swapped around quite easily, so I got no qualms there, Marty, at all.
Yeah, no, I feel like some people could relate to Gus. Obviously, not Marty being the new kid, but also having a military father, and also a haircut you could set your watch to.
Oh, absolutely.
Johnny Leonidas.
All right, so we know that Gus is Simon's 5th. So who's your 6th, Simon?
Yeah, again, 6, 5, and 4, all much of a muchness for me. But my least favourite character is Vince, number 6.
Same here, man. Same here.
Yep. He's, again, all good characters. That's one of the reasons it's such a great show. But Vince, not maybe quite as multifaceted as the others. You know, the black kid being the jock perhaps is one of the only things that hasn't aged quite as well in the show that everything else. Yeah, good character, but probably just not quite as multifaceted. And maybe I need to rewatch it because maybe rewatch it more because maybe there are a few key episodes where much is revealed about Vince.
Before Marty reveals his high ranking of Vince, I had also had Vince at 6. I've got notes on all these characters, and my Vince notes have nothing. He doesn't bring a lot to the table in my eyes when it comes to the show. I think he's important as TJ's second-hand man, and that's about it, really. He's like his hype man, pretty much.
Yeah, a little bit of a troubling portrayal, perhaps, but maybe I'm just thinking too much about it.
Well, Marty's a jock, so he probably had Vince real high.
I was very close to having Vince as my second, but in the end, after a bit of thought, I ended up chucking Vince in at the 4. Yeah, he's a jock. He's a competitive one. He's the athlete. He does play that role pretty well of kind of mellowing out TJ when he goes a little bit rogue. But I watched the kickball episode where Vince got the yips. And as someone who has previously, and some would say still has the yips, I felt a little bit of compassion there. So yeah, hence why Vince snaked my 4 position.
And the other minor issue with Vince is that isn't there the exact same character on Hey Arnold?
Gerald.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
how good he is at sport, Gerald. I could be.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
They
maybe not.
were more of a baseball type of a gang, weren't they?
They're more of a rounders, a stickball,
Stickball.
More New York, I think. New York, wasn't it? But yeah, no, sorry. So yeah, Vince 6. Is it your turn to reveal your 4? Or is it Sam?
I was just going to ask Marty. In the kickball episode, did he have the yips from kicking the ball?
Yeah.
I remember that episode. Great kicker, wasn't he? Great kicker of the ball.
Oh, he was your kickball champion at 3rd Street for sure.
Yeah.
Not as good as when Gretchen invented a boot for TJ to wear, and he booted the ball out of the school. Maybe that's a good segue. I don't know, but we've got Gus number 6 for Marty and Vince number 4 for Marty. So who's your number 5?
And this was tough, but I've ended up going Gretchen.
Ooh,
Yeah. A lot of back and forth on this. Gretchen, absolute sweetheart. The voice of reason, logic, facts, and science. But could she just have please blown her goddamn nose? Like, I understand, allergies, nerdy kid, whatever, but blow the nose. For goodness sake.
that bumped you down a few.
Did anybody else look up online after hearing Gretchen's voice? Gretchen voice Chucky Rugrats?
Oh.
So I definitely did, and it's not the same voice.
Oh.
But definitely nasally, very nasally, both of them.
Just blow the goddamn nose. Chucky's 3. You can understand him walking around with hoopies going down to his mouth, but Gretchen.
Fair, very fair.
Interesting. Simon, where did you have Gretchen?
2.
2.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Well, I feel bad about having her at 2 after that tour de force from Marty. But I'm a English nerd, and Gretchen's language is top notch. Some of the sentences she comes up with are just hilarious in their how complicated they are. There's just completely unnecessary use of big words, and I also like how comical the drawing of Gretchen is.
Yeah.
She's this ridiculously skinny, ridiculous haircut, sort of nerdy, rakish Pippi Longstocking. So I've always enjoyed just the actual drawing of Gretchen on top of how funny she is. I mean, I'm sure she's intentionally funny as far as the creators of the cartoon are concerned, but not as far as she is concerned. But yeah, so that's why she's my number 2. And yeah, she always finds a way to get involved. Kickball, she's obviously not an athlete, but she uses that brain of hers to help TJ win the day.
She'd run a hell of a stat sheet.
Yeah, I had Gretchen at 3, so I think Marty's the odd one out there on Gretchen. I'm surprised neither of you have mentioned her pet calculator, Galileo, who talks, I think, and she could definitely walk the dog with a pro-yo. She's real good at yo-yoing.
Forgot about that.
She'd know all the physics of chatterings as well.
Yeah, so I've had gone Gretchen 3, Gus 5, and Vince 6. So Simon, who's next on your? We're getting up to our favourites almost here. Who have you got next, mate?
So I've got Vince 6, Gus 5, Gretchen 2. So I'm actually going to 4 here.
I'd like you. Yeah, you need to tell us your number 4.
My number 4 is Michelle Rodriguez. Oh no, Spinelli. Sorry, Spinelli. Yep, she's my number 4. The old tomboy Spinelli, and honestly, I feel harsh on Vince because Spinelli, neither of them are one-trick ponies, but maybe they don't bring. She's just a tomboy, sticks up for TJ. She's a tomboy. We get it. She's good.
Sounds like she should be your number 6.
Yeah, look, I said 4, 5, and 6, very interchangeable. So I don't have anything major. I love her moxie. Love her moxie. She doesn't care who she steps on to stick up for whoever she will stick up for. And that's why I like her. But she hasn't quite cracked my top 3 because, again, just much, a little bit like Vincent Gus, bit of a one-trick pony.
Marty.
Yeah, my 1, 2, and 3 were the ones that I had were quite interchangeable. In the end, I went with Spinelli as 1.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, my thought process was if I was at 3rd Street myself, who would I want to be mates with? And I think Spinelli offers a lot, especially in a group mentality. She's always first in. She's got your back. She's got backs. She's got a tough exterior, but there's a little bit of depth to that character as well. I remember in the Ashley's episode when it's revealed that her first name is Ashley.
Oh, that's right.
And the challenge that she went through from going from her tomboy nature into quite a prissy type of a girl. And how she ended up fighting through to stay true to her own colours and her own character. Hence why I decided to give Spinelli my gold medal.
I feel bad now. That's a great rationale. Great episode too, that I had forgotten about.
Huge.
I failed miserably here. That's a good call, Marty.
Yeah, you are the odd one out because Spinelli is my number 2. And yeah, I've got written down that Ashley's episode as a huge part of her growth. She's a rogue with a heart of gold.
Oh yeah,
she'll back up anyone who's in her gang, and the gang is so bizarre. Someone like in that kind of character could easily cast someone like Gretchen or Mikey or Gus out, but she doesn't. I really like her voice. And the part that I'd forgotten about completely was her parents and how her parents are like, they call her Pookie and are like extremely outward with their affection with her, at which she obviously hates, and especially in the episode where she ends up staying with Muriel Finster. She gets babysat by her because the parents are good friends with Muriel. Great episode, by the way. I reckon Sean Bob would revel in Spinelli too, because she loves wrestling.
Oh yeah. That was I should have mentioned earlier. That was almost the clincher for me.
Big wrestler. So I've got Spinelli 2, Gretchen 3, Gus 5, Vince 6. So I've only got 2 left. I'd like to know where you've got Mikey, Mardo.
I got Mikey at the 2. Mikey, yeah, Mikey. He's a very interesting character. He is the one that, I guess, as Recess is a show about living in the moment at that age, he's the one that sort of holds on to that last bit of innocence. He can communicate really well with the kindergartners. He's the embodiment of innocence, belief, faith. But yeah, I guess you could also cross that with naivety / ignorance. Also, he's a great singer, and I thought there was a little bit of a Barney Gumble type parallel going on there. But Mikey went through a big character journey on a number of different episodes, from losing that inner child, and you could kind of see that point, a la Ralph Wiggum, but almost when he changes into realizing that as an adult, the world beats down on you and nothing is as it seems. So seeing the growth through the loss of the innocence of a child and a character gave him a little bit more depth rather than just the big, gentle, giant buffoon type character.
Nice. Si, where'd you have Mikey?
I got a lot on Mikey. I've got him at 3. Though possibly could have had him higher. Just to Marty's point about the loss of innocence with him, I think watching Recess were the first times, and this is probably just an ego thing, I guess. But my favourite novel of all time is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And in one of the episodes, Mikey, he writes, well, I'm not sure it's one or more, but he writes poetry on his baseball glove.
Definitely does.
And in The Catcher in the Rye, Holden's little brother Ali, who dies of leukemia at 13, he also writes poetry on his baseball glove. So it's a bit of a shout out to that character in Catcher in the Rye. And that whole book is about Holden being obsessed with innocence and obsessed with keeping that innocence. So I thought that's a really interesting point you brought up there, Marty, about that journey, because there he is a direct shout out to Ellie, who is in a book that is just obsessed with the keeping of innocence. So yeah, for that reason, pretty much alone, because I'm a massive Catcher in the Rye fan, I had to have Mikey in my top 3.
Nice. Yeah, I had him at 4. But hearing those impassioned speeches, I could potentially bump him above Gretchen.
Almost, there was some tears almost there from Marty and me talking about Mikey.
I like the fact that it mentioned before, but he's almost like spiritual. And everything that he does, it's kind of breaking down societal's norms and expectations of who he should be as this larger than life 9-year-old. And he's a mint goalkeeper. So that leaves the leader of the gang, who I think is mine and Simon's number 1, and Marty's number 3, if I've done my maths correctly.
You have indeed. I was very close to having TJ at the 2. But TJ, great character.
Yeah. Why didn't you have him at number 1?
I I was a bit. Sounds like I was a bit like you guys. I had two halves to it, and trying to figure out where to place him. And when I first started, I had TJ as my number one, and maybe because he's got like anti-main character bias kind of thing going on. As I was looking back upon the episode, not only the episodes that I watched, but memories as well. But I, again, on a different day, I could easily have TJ as my number one.
Sure.
Si?
Yeah, I guess all I was thinking the whole time was who gives more, which 90s character gives more inspirational speeches per episode, TJ Detweiler or Danny Tanner?
Two great cartoon dads. Oh, 90s dads.
So, yeah, I had the over-under at TJ's inspirational speeches per episode at 1.5. Probably over, probably an easy over. But no, look, I think, as I say, these characters are also wonderful. I'm not upset at all with Marty having that 3.
I think the biggest thing that TJ definitely does have in his favour is his level of interaction with a lot of the other side characters as well. That was one factor I was definitely thinking of. He does have a great rivalry with not only Muriel Finster, as you mentioned, but the great Principal Prickley, Randall, among a lot of others.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned who is the person that I would want to be mates with if I was at that school, and it would want to be TJ. And it shows because everyone is TJ's mate, apart from Randall. Yep. But even there's an episode where Randall is part of the gang and TJ accepts him in.
Just like he accepts the new kid, Gus.
Just like he accepts the new kid, Gus. Gustav. Hey, that was a good exercise. Actually enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
We'll just touch on a few of the extra characters or the supporting staff.
Before we do,
who's the one character that made your
that's what I want to know.
Your top 6?
Randall.
Oh, Randall was 2.
Yeah, Randall.
Madness.
Great. I think because without Randall, basically none of the plot lines exist.
That's what happens when you watch one episode, Simon. You need to watch more than one episode.
No, watch two. I think I just found Randall really funny. But before we do move on to those side characters, and I will watch more episodes because I enjoyed them, so the ones I watched so thoroughly. I think I can't remember if it was you or Marty, Sam, who said the variation of and what a gang it is. You've got the black jock, you've got the skinny rake white nerdy kid, you've got the big sensitive kid, the tomboy, the leader, all that sort of stuff. And if that was if this wasn't a show about secondary school and you had all those characters, it would feel like tokenism a little bit, I guess. But in primary school, and I think for our experience, Sam, and I'm not sure about your primary school experience, Marty, but you kind of just hang out with who's there a lot of the time, right? Whereas when you arrive at secondary school, eventually your friends become a bit more homogenous and your interests are very similar, if not exactly the same. And if this was a show that was similar, but it was about high school, it would seem a bit forced, whereas what I love about the show still is that I don't think that is forced, because at primary school there is that variation. And I thought it was an exaggeration on real life, like any show, but it was an exaggeration with truths behind it. And I thought the variety in that gang summed that up quite well, and it was pretty authentic as far as cartoons are concerned.
I think you raise a good point about the ages as well. They're kind of right on that cusp between, what are they, 4th graders, I think? So what's that? Is that one before intermediate? Kind of about that age where at intermediate you're kind of losing that innocence of a child, as I mentioned earlier. But as you mentioned, Si, there's a lot more that they are able to get away with as characters, still having that childlike, imaginative sense to them. Their ability to do things that you just cannot do as a secondary school student because you get ridiculed, vilified, ostracized, whatever it might be, bullied, if we're talking reality. So having them at that age and still being able to maintain that diversity is an absolute key point, and probably why it ended up resonating so well with such a large audience in comparison to other shows directed at kids that age. They're either very kind of homogenous type characters, right? They've all got the exact same interest and almost background.
Yeah.
Great points. Not places I thought we were going to go with this Recess podcast, if I'm honest. I'll just throw out a few of the bit characters, and then I've got a couple of questions for you. We've got Muriel P. Finster, Principal Peter Prickley, Miss Grotke, who I'd completely forgotten about.
Great character.
Yeah, King Bob, the Hustler Kid, who has that big flashes jacket.
He wasn't actually. We called that kid the dealer at Hutt Valley High. But he was definitely existed in real life at Hutt Valley High. Yep, go on.
Yeah, old Alistair. Swinger Girl, Upside Down Girl, the Diggers, Corn Chip Girl.
That was a weak one. I thought that was a weak one. All the rest were fantastic.
Agreed.
Corn Chip Girl was a bit weak.
Yeah, not a big fan of Corn Chip Girl. But Michael, guess a question about one of them. Where does Peter Prickley, Principal Prickley, rank in TV principals?
Excellent question. I had a really big think about this. Flathead Fisher was one of my favourite principals. Obviously, Skinner comes to mind. But Prickley, he was an excellent character. He was a very vibrant and out there school principal. But his relationship with TJ was crucial to the element of him being a principal at that school and his role. He backed down and changed his viewpoints. Often his viewpoints were definitely wrong in the first place as a result of TJ's actions and his interaction with that whole authoritarian rule. But that authoritarian rule can actually end up listening to reason and making a good call in the end, which is that whole adults v kids dynamic that Recess so successfully explores as well.
Yeah.
There's also a Superintendent Skinner.
Yes, I definitely did notice that.
Which I thought was interesting. You mentioned something about Randall in a comparison, Marty. What was that you had?
Have you guys seen the movie Monsters, Inc.?
Yeah, definitely.
That purple dinosaur thingy, lizard thing. And then I was trying to figure out what that character's name was on Monsters, Inc., who works for the Scream Factory. It's Randall.
That's
and he's got the same eyes.
So do you reckon Monsters, Inc. took the idea from Randall Weems?
For the Randall and Monsters, Inc., if you look at the actual faces, there's a lot of similarities, and there's got to be a lot of inspiration from those shifty, Weasley little eyes that Randall Weems has.
There's one other one that Menlo, who was used to be TJ's mate or something.
Yep. Yeah,
and
I think they found out that TJ all along had been going to, even though Menlo is quite a quote unquote uncool character, TJ ended up still going to his birthdays every year.
What a hero TJ is, eh?
What a hero.
All right. I've got a little bit of a bit of Tracy trivia for you. A little. I won't spend too long on it, but couple of things, and I did remember this distinctly. TJ's voice changed a lot throughout the seasons.
Oh no! Was it an Aunt Viv type situation?
Voiced by 4 different people.
No way.
There was one main guy, but I remember distinctly watching an episode once. I was like, that doesn't sound like him at all. Did you guys? You obviously searched up. Who did you think was Chucky Finsterside?
Gretchen. It's not. But
you must have heard who Spinelli is.
Yeah, well, there's one very famous actress who plays one of the gang.
Yeah, or Pamela Adlon is Spinelli, and she's she's done really, really well for herself. She was writing for like Louis C.K. and but just close your eyes and listen. It's Bobby Hill from King of the Hill.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Way.
I didn't notice, but now that you say that, it's one of those things where you think, oh,
That's Bobby Hill.
I remember listening, just hearing it this time around. I was like, that is definitely someone I know. It wasn't. I didn't think it was Bobby Hill, but when I heard it, I was like, it definitely is. There was a crossover episode in 2006, which is 5 years after Recess finished. I think it was 2006, with Lilo and Stitch of all shows.
What?
Bizarre. And a couple about Spinelli. Her mum was voiced by Katie Segal.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I don't know that, but legend, of course, Katie Segal.
Well, I heard it in that episode. I was like, that is definitely Leela.
We went to Leela first.
Yeah.
Big Bundy.
But that's all the Tracy trivia I've got. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
I want to show my kids. I definitely want to watch it with my kids. That I loved it so much on the rewatch. So I want to show my kids. Really, it's just a awesome show, and I'm looking forward to watching more of it. And I'm glad that it hasn't aged poorly. In fact, it's aged very well.
I thought they stuck to the values of their. I wrote this kind of like little thing. So they balanced kind of many positive and playfully critiqued rather than alienated different views or more harsher views, whilst still holding firm collective teamwork style values. And they portrayed the whole kids experience at that same time. For a lot of shows who attempt to do this, it ends up coming across either quite hokey / overly political, but they struck that balance as a show like superbly well. And it's there's not too many cartoons that can stand the test of time, but this is 100% one that definitely has.
Yeah. Great great backing track as well, like that whole big band.
Yeah.
A lot of tuba in there. Always a big fan of a tuba in there.
Same as the kindergartners, they like the tuba.
I can't believe how, like, I reckon, I think someone mentioned at the start of this that it's actually probably gotten better over time. Like, it's aged so well. Like, I don't think, normally we say a lot of these things don't hold up well at all. There's some kind of stereotypes or something within them that don't hold up. But watching it, I was like, I only planned to watch a couple of episodes. I watched an entire season and planned to watch more. And I'd like to show my 4-year-old, but I think I've got to wait a few years because I tried with The Simpsons and she wasn't interested in that at all. I just don't want to have another rejection.
Yeah. And I think what Marty said, I mean, of all the wonderful, complex things Marty has said, I think one of the most simple things Marty said today was that it's underrated. I think it's criminally underrated, like absolutely criminally underrated, and it should be in the canon of the great shows. And I don't feel it. Maybe it is. Maybe obviously I don't do my research on what's considered the best cartoons of the late '90s, but I think often in that same bracket you look at Rugrats and things like that, which is also great. But I just think I just want to concur that I think it's criminally underrated.
But anyway, Marty, Simon, your insights were invaluable. As I said, this turned out to be almost a philosophical pod. Pat and Sean will be gutted they missed it.